Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. We've been having a few technical hitches with the lack of electricity and the internet. Welcome to Love After 40 Challenge. This is our second day. This Love After 40 Challenge will be going on the whole of this week, and we'll be having different topics each and every day. This evening, we have with us Coach Caroline Gaiduma. She's here with us. She cannot be in the studio with us live. She's having some few challenging problems with electricity, but we are on phone with her. We're speaking to her, and we'll have the discussion as we go along. Coach Caroline, please introduce yourself and welcome to our Love After 40 Challenge.
Thank you so much, Coach Eva. I really appreciate you and your people, your viewers, for all the patience. I really appreciate. My name is Caroline Gaiduma. I'm a transformation coach. I've been coaching for the last 7 going to 8 years. I have also been training coaches for a while, and now I am a public speaking trainer and coach, and I've been doing that for a year. I'm also a mother. I have 3 children. I am a single woman, or rather, I'm not married, but I'm in a relationship. I am also a mental health advocate, having gone through depression and anxiety, and I am also a mentor. So I have mentored in the YALI program, the Young Africa Leadership Initiative. I've also mentored at the We Create Center. And I am just very passionate about life. I'm passionate about God, spirituality, and most importantly, transformation. So that's about me in a nutshell.
Okay. Thank you very much for being here with us and for wanting and to help us, even as we go through these challenges of trying to find love, trying to find good men and good women to spend the rest of our lives with, because we all want to love and we need also to be loved. And it's important that as we grow older, we are in different phases of our lives. When you are younger, it's easy. Someone tells you they love you and you fall in love and get into relationships. Now when we are 40 and above, it's not that easy. People come with baggage from previous relationships, and we always wonder, how do I start? Where do I go? Who do I see? And the topic of self-love is, to me, very important, because what do we do in the meantime? In the meantime, we're just alone. It's just me. Do I sit and wait, or do I work on myself and make sure that I'm in a position ready to embrace the love that will come? Maybe you can define for us what self-love is, or self-care, or self-discovery. Welcome.
Wow. Thank you, Coach Eva. Even before I discuss self-love, I love analogies. I also run a podcast called Analogy, the Analogy Alchemist. You can find it on Spotify and other platforms where you can find your podcasts. And I love the way this session has begun, because even when you said welcome back to After 40, it felt like how people after 40 years are being told in relationships, welcome back, you know.
Yes.
After you have struggled, and now you're being told welcome back, but then it doesn't look the way you are expecting it to look. And that's where we are beginning at. People after 40 are beginning to accept that it might not look the way it usually is depicted by society, by, whichever billboards we are looking at. So coming back to your question about self-love, self-love has 2 words in it. It's made up of 2 words, self and love. And as a transformation coach, I realize when I'm doing my work that a lot of the experiences we have is because of how we are defining things. And so if there's any transformation that has to happen for us, we have to redefine the basics. And so self-love, I'm breaking it down to the basics, the self and the love. So what does self mean? Self is your identity, your psychological identity, how you see yourself, how you experience yourself, that's the self. And then love is something that's so hard to define. In fact, the Bible just went to great lengths to try and describe love, but love encompasses feeling and action. And the most basic way I can define it is basically developing faculties of compassion and attention. So however that is expressed, however that is felt, like from the one loving and the one being loved, that is love. So self-love is having that deep, deep, deep compassion for the self and paying attention to the self. That is self-love. But how do we arrive there? You've included some other terms in your question. Self-care, I think you mentioned about self-discovery. And I just want to say that there is a process for getting to self-love. First and foremost, the self is who you have experienced yourself as from when you were a kid. And so there is no one who knows you better than you. And the first question that I usually ask is, do you accept yourself exactly the way you are? Self-acceptance is first. Self-acceptance is appreciating your individuality. It's an attitude of saying, I accept myself the way I am, the way I'm feeling, the way I'm thinking, what I've done, I accept. The next stage is self-esteem. Self-esteem is the opinion you have about yourself. It's how you evaluate yourself. Do you have a high opinion of yourself? Do you have a low opinion of yourself? Do you have a balanced opinion about yourself? When you accept yourself and you have a healthy opinion of yourself, only then can you love yourself. So that is now in relation to what you mentioned. Self-discovery is really that whole process that brings you to self-love.
Thank you very much for that description.
Yeah.
Would you say, even in your experience as a counselor and in dealing with individuals, that are we conscious about ourselves? Do we sit down and think about me and what kind of person I think I am? And do we accept the way we are, or we have sometimes a skewed image or version of ourselves? What's your experience when you mentor people, when you counsel people?
So my experience, which also includes my own experience as a human being, because I'm not out of this equation, I'm in it, like totally, is let's start from the beginning. You're born, you're defined. First of all, you come out of your mother's womb and they say, oh, it's a girl, oh, it's a boy. That's the first label you pick up. And it has nothing to do with what you think. It has what they have decided about genders. And then you come home and you're told, oh, you are named after your mother's mother or whatever. And they start pasting qualities on you. And they start defining you by their own terms, with their own projections, with their own experience, through their own experiences. And so as you're growing up, whoever it is that you're learning that you are is usually based on your primary caregiver's definition of you. And so what does that do to us? It makes us begin to take our attention away from ourselves, and we are looking at who we are based on how others are defining us. And so you start to relate to yourself via other people. And that is what creates the imbalanced self and the lack of self-acceptance, because you only accept yourself to the extent that others accept you. If as a child, your mother thinks that you're too loud,
and she tells you you're too loud, can you reduce or can you keep quiet when visitors are here? You're never going to accept that aspect of you, that side of you. You're never going to accept it. If you are in a peer group and they think that the way you dress is shady and is not trendy, then you don't accept that part of yourself. What do you do? Because you have a great need to fit in. You have a great need to be accepted by others. So you start to shape yourself and to model yourself based on other people's ideas of who you should be. And so we do not accept ourselves as we are, basically because others do not accept us as we are. Now, when we get to the age of 40, something happens, and that's why it's a big age. People who study astrology will tell you that it's the point where you have reached and you're like, I am done living for other people. I want to live for myself. But then there comes the next crisis. Who am I? And what do I want? You've never asked yourself that question. And so I get a lot of my clients about that age, when they're like, oh my God, I really want to live for myself, but I don't know who I am. So what do we end up doing? We end up rebelling against what others want us to do. Like a 2-year-old in psychology, there's a stage between the ages of 18 months to 24 months that is called counterdependence. Counterdependence is when the 2-year-old is trying to build their boundaries, their sense of self. Who am I? So what do? They start to say no to everything everyone is saying. Why? Because if, for example, we have a shamba, and I don't know where my shamba ends or begins, but I know you're my neighbor, I will ask you, where is your shamba? So that I know where your shamba ends is where mine begins. So we find ourselves in the same counterdependency stage when we are 40. And that's why you find people in marriages are rebelling against rules that they have followed all along. You find that we are rebelling in the spiritual places, we are rebelling in political scenes, we are rebelling in social circles, because now we want to find ourselves, and the only way to find ourselves is to say no to what everyone else has said. So it's really important for us to begin to accept ourselves, accept our story, accept our emotions, because that's something that I find lacks for a lot of people who come through my hands. Yeah.
Thank you for that. How would you advise us to be able to start learning about ourselves, about accepting ourselves? Is there a way that it can be done that will help us to discover who we are?
Yes, there's definitely a way. There's definitely steps to do that. And first of all, I would like to tell everybody who hears this to understand that you cannot love somebody you don't trust. And you cannot trust somebody you don't know. So if you want to love yourself, you must go back all the way to knowing yourself. And I know a lot of people say, I know myself. Do you really? Or do you know what you have been taught to know about yourself? And the first step to knowing yourself is it's not about your labels. It's not about what you've done. It's not about they have called you. They have called me a coach. They have called me Caro. They have called me, all those are very superficial layers of who I am. The depth of who I am is my own feelings, my own thoughts. Though that's the level in which I need to know myself. What are my true feelings? What are my true thoughts? Because suppression from an early age begins on that level. Your feelings, you're taught to suppress your feelings so that you don't own them. You don't own your anger. You don't own your sensuality. You don't own your happiness even. I remember when we were kids, our parents would come and find us laughing joyfully and playing, and they would tell us, nisikie mtu akilia. And that would immediately dampen us down, and we would be like, we shouldn't be too happy because we'll make somebody mad, or we will cry a few minutes after. So there's so much suppression that has happened. And as we were hiding our feelings and our thoughts from others, we hid them from ourselves. So we must begin to know ourselves from that level. After we know ourselves, we get to the next step. Because when you know yourself, you don't just know your negative emotions or your negative thoughts. You will also come across some very amazing qualities that you have, very amazing lessons that you've learned, very amazing inner resources that you've built along your journey. And because of what you know, now you're going to be able to trust yourself. You can trust that you will carry yourself through all the challenges. I like to tell people, my clients, and even tell myself when I'm in a very down place, I have survived all the challenges that I've ever faced in my life. None of them has managed to kill me. So I can trust myself. You know, you have 100% success rate this far. Why don't you trust yourself? Why don't you trust that you know what your next step is? Why don't you trust your idea of what is good for you? Why don't you trust your intuition? It's because you don't know yourself. Because the minute you know yourself, you will know the giants that you are, and you're going to trust yourself. And then when you trust yourself, now you can love yourself. Because with all the knowledge, with all the knowing that you have, with all the trust that you've built, you are able to build compassion. And what is compassion? Maybe a lot of people are wondering, what is this compassion I'm talking about? Compassion is the ability to witness your feelings and thoughts with acceptance, care, and understanding. Many of us run away from ourselves. We don't trust ourselves enough to say, I have the capacity to be with my emotions. I have the capacity to identify and observe my thoughts. And we are running away, and in the running away, we come across so many activities that we do to distract ourselves from ourselves. And so we are not able to love ourselves because we can't sit with ourselves even for 5 minutes. So there's a journey. When you love yourself, you have faith in yourself. You can take risks. You can overcome setbacks. You can overcome sorrows. You can carry yourself with compassion and acceptance through the whole of your journey. And then from there comes the next thing which you had mentioned in the first question, self-care. And I like to call it self-nurturing. You cannot nurture yourself if you don't love yourself. In any case, you're going to erode yourself. So to answer your question in summary, yes, it's possible, and those are the steps to do that.
Thank you for that. In discussing with a lot of the people in this group, a lot of them talk about being or going through experiences where they are not happy, or they accept what the other person wants, and yet they don't want that. The lack of boundaries, even in relationships, when some other people go too far, but we don't have the courage to tell them, no, I am not going there, I am not doing this, I don't accept this. Would you say self-awareness and self-care would assist us to be able to be more bold, be more confident? Would you tell us a bit more about that?
This is actually self-love, because one of the things, I'm not just a coach, I love to train people in my session, because I believe for any transformation to happen, you have to have new information. If you only have unga, ugali and water, you can only make uji or ugali. No matter how much you try to spice that recipe, you just have those two things, you're going to make the same thing over and over again. But if I add some information for you, maybe you're going to create another recipe. So let me add some information for anyone listening. Relationships are a mirror of your relationship with yourself. Relationships are a mirror of the relationship that you have with yourself. So your relationships are actually telling you more about yourself and less about the other person. Because if you're not enforcing boundaries. What does that say about your relationship with yourself? Another thing that I want to mention at this point is there are three kinds of people. If you have, for example, three people who have bread, for example, one person loves the bread, and they decide they're going to share this bread because they love it so much, and it's like they just want other people to taste the bread. So they eat half the bread, and they give the other half of the bread to another person. Now, this person who does that is not expecting the other person to give them bread back. They're just giving them bread because they're like, oh, I just want you to feel what I've felt. The second person is the one who'll be like, this bread is so good, I can't share it with anyone. So that person is not looking for anyone to share it with. He actually, if you try and come and ask for some bread from them, they will refuse. The other person is thinking, this is such good bread, it can get me something, so I'm going to trade with it. So I'm looking for someone who I can make a transaction with this bread. So these three people, think of them as lovers, and this bread is their love. You are one of those people, and you know yourself, and you know what you're doing with your bread. And how do you know what you're doing with your bread? The results that you're getting. So if, for example, you're somebody who wanted to give this bread as a transaction, you're negotiating with somebody, they might push you to the edge. And because you want what they have so badly, you're willing to take any kind of treatment because whatever they have is more valuable than what you have. So that's what we do in relationships. If whatever they have is more valuable than what you have, then you're willing to take so much. If whatever you have is so valuable, then you cannot allow anyone in your space. If whatever you have is so valuable that you're willing to share it, then you dictate the terms. And you decide who has enough, who is deserving of your love. So most of us get into relationships as a transaction. And we get frustrated. We are like two beggars with bowls. So I came in here with a bowl and I'm begging you to give me your love. And you come into the same relationship with a bowl and you're begging me to give you my love. So who will give who? We end up clashing, tunagonganisha hizo bowls, and we hate each other for life. Because I'm not getting anything from you and you're saying the same thing. So my dear friends, look at how you're relating with this person and look at it as a mirror. You're looking at a mirror. How you're allowing yourself to be treated is actually how you are treating yourself. In fact, they say that whatever love that you have for yourself, you give it to others. It's the only love you're capable of giving it. If we can measure love in liters, if you have 2 liters of love that you give to yourself, you can only give 2 liters of love to other people. But they say that if you are torturing yourself the quantity of 2 liters, you allow others to torture you 4 liters. That's how it works. So I don't know if that's a sufficient answer to that question, but I tried to add in as much insight as I could in that line.
Just a small follow-up to that discussion. Is it that we don't value ourselves enough? We are not even aware that we should be valuing ourselves. We should be expensive and that we just not anything or anybody should be able to be in our space. What would you say about valuing ourselves?
What I can attach the value to is actually value is about being deserving, seeing yourself as worthy or as deserving. So if you are not deserving of your own love, something in you will make you feel or will dramatize a scenario where you're not deserving of other people's love. Because if you're not deserving of your own love, then which other love are you waiting to receive? And you know, love is not like water that will be poured into you. It's not something that is coming outside of you. If you love somebody, for example, it is generated within your own heart. They didn't give you a cup to drink. They didn't give you a pill to swallow. You felt it from within your own heart because of how you translated their actions or their presence or their attention. So it's always coming from you. But why is it that you can't hold it for yourself? Why don't you feel deserving and worthy of your own love? Why does it have to always happen because of somebody else? Like you seated in your room cannot feel like that unless there is somebody you're directing it to. And we have so many barriers that we create to feeling the love. We are like, I won't feel like this unless somebody who is tall, dark, and handsome shows up and says, I love you. That's what we do. And that's if we are not valuing the experience of loving ourselves, then we cannot create a situation, we cannot manifest a situation, we cannot attract a situation where somebody comes and tells us that. Because as I said earlier, it's a mirror. If you look at the mirror and you're wearing a headscarf, the image in the mirror is wearing a headscarf. It cannot be wearing a cape, it cannot be wearing a hoodie. So you have to change your own internal experience. You have to direct the love to yourself. You must look at yourself and say, I deserve my own love. I deserve it, because that experience of loving yourself is what creates something that looks like you value yourself. You know, when people look at you, they're like, I can't treat her less than this. You know, there are people who show up in your life and you know exactly how to treat them. You can't fool around with them. Why? They haven't told you anything. But it's because of how they show up and the energy they radiate, because of their own relationship with themselves.
Thank you. That is very true. There's some people who have, sometimes we call it a presence. You know, they just walk in or something and you just know there's nothing you can tell them because they know who they are and they know what they want.
Exactly. Even dogs know.
Yes.
Like if you show up in somebody's compound and you're afraid, the dog will take advantage of that fear. Like if you're walking around with an aura of a victim, you will be victimized everywhere, even by the Kokoteni guy, even, you know, because that's what you're giving. Like that's the vibe you're giving. That's what you're attracting. So that's where to change from.
So what we get is actually what we are giving. So what we are giving, what is in front of us is, as you said, is a reflection. So when I'm in a bad relationship and I'm getting stressed and I'm getting traumatized, it's a reflection of me first.
You are having a toxic relationship with yourself.
Wow. Toxic relationship with myself. So
like okay, this is what I tell people, Coach Eva. I ask my clients, if you are in a relationship with yourself, like you, another you is removed from you and put there next to you.
Yes.
What would people say about that relationship?
Okay. They would okay.
Some people would tell you, Muate, by the way, just leave this person. Yeah. They're toxic.
They're toxic.
Unfortunately, it's you.
It's me.
Yeah.
Tell me, there's this phrase that we love using so much about finding my better half. Do we have a misconception that we are not full, we are not whole, that we need somebody, and if we don't have them, then there's something missing? Maybe you can shed some light about that.
Okay, let me become a conspiracy right now, because there is so much power in people loving themselves, because when you love yourself fully, then you have the potential to become everything that you are designed to become. But because that is going to go against powers that be, whatever you look at it, whether you're Christian, you call them, whatever it is, the dark side. Then there is this huge conspiracy that has been created to keep us looking outside of ourselves for something that we can only get from within ourselves. And so if you look at our programming, when we started reading the Cinderella stories, I don't know why they were so famous in Africa, like seriously.
Yes, they really
We
were.
know all the princesses from Sleeping Beauty to what, like Barbies.
Yes.
And then we were brought for this craze of Mexican soaps, which they call love stories, and they're just toxic drama.
And we went through the Mills and Boons books also.
Exactly, Mills
Yeah.
and Boons. And then we have Hollywood with all their crying, sobbing, love stories. And we have been programmed that is what love is. And so when we don't see drama, we are like, okay, I think I haven't found my one.
Yes.
And then we go and find drama. And then when we actually find love, we're like, this is so boring. And you start to look for something that has some action, So it's like we have been programmed to look for something outside of ourselves. And that's one of the things that is like, even in weddings, you will hear people telling you better half.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And even this story of soulmates, it's a story about that there's something out there that will come and completely, and this is like putting you totally out of control. What if this person never comes?
Yeah.
What's my fate? That I will live this whole life incomplete. You see, what happens is we create a psychological idea of look at a chapo and cut a quarter and take it away and put it behind a cupboard. Now you're the chapo that is 3/4 walking around looking for this quarter, which you yourself has hidden. Because you first have to agree with the idea that you are not complete. So you agree with that idea, and then now you start going to look for the one who completes you. And nobody has even given you a checklist of how this person looks like, how they talk. It's like you're doomed to fail from the get-go. Because even your parents did not complete each other. So where do you have role models for that?
Thank you. Yes, that is very, it's an eye-opener.
Yeah, like have you seen whatever you're looking for anywhere? Because whatever you're looking for is a fantasy in your head.
Which society has helped mold for me that I need this person, should be this kind of person who does this, who looks like this. And every time I keep failing because I just don't find that concept of that half of mine that seems to be walking around somewhere. So how
exactly?
So where does that leave us? Because we would still like to have meaningful relationships. We still like to meet people that we resonate with, that we can have a bond with. Where does that leave us? That yes, I am not going to focus on finding somebody who's my better half, but I would still like to meet somebody. And yes, I love myself, I value myself. How do we go about approaching or meeting people with that in mind, that yes, I'm complete, but yes, if somebody is going to come and compliment me, then that is good enough. Maybe you can give us more insight, because we would like to find love, we would like to be in good relationships, but we are getting into them as people who value ourselves, as people who believe we are worth it. We are not going to take anything less than we believe we deserve. So how do we use that kind of information going forward, going into meeting people, going into having relationships?
One thing you must understand and you must accept is that there is no shortcut around it. You cannot avoid loving yourself and then expect to get somebody who loves you for who you are and all that things that we are dreaming about. You can't escape the work That's one thing I want you to understand. And you cannot think it and say it, oh, I love myself, now I know my value, and then you wait. You'll be back here with another drama story.
Back to
it's
square
not
one.
about what you are thinking with your conscious mind. You have to do the work. And so the first thing I tell people, can you find the closest therapist or the closest coach so that you can begin the process of learning how to see yourself so that you can know yourself, so that you can trust yourself. Because when you do that work, believe me, it's a mirror. You will look in the mirror and you will see love, and that is all that you will attract because you have become it. So I like to say, once you have fully embodied what you want, you see this soulmate we are looking for, this love we are looking for.
Yes.
The minute you become that, when you embody it,
then you will find
what you want will be revealed in front of you. It will definitely show up. But most of us, we want it to show up before we do the work because we don't want to do the work. Because we don't want to go and deal with those repressed emotions, because we don't want to deal with the guilt and shame, especially if you're over 40. There's a lot of guilt and shame about what has happened, what has not happened, who did not, all of that, you know? So unless you're willing to do the work, forget about this kind of a relationship. And every relationship that you have had has been trying to get you to that point. It's like there's a you inside of you that is calling to you, that is saying, love me. And I'm grateful, and I'm gracious enough to show you in the mirror pahali umefika na hiyo love. But you, when you look at the mirror, you're not seeing yourself. You're looking at the other person. You're punching the mirror. You're telling the mirror, mimi sitaki hiyo hoodie, mimi nataka kofia, just change yourself. And I'm not saying to tolerate abuse, by the way, because that's another thing about love. When you accept abuse from somebody, it means there's something happening in your own relationship with yourself. You're like, I need this person so much, however they are showing up, and I can't stand being with myself or alone because I'm more scary than this abuser. Hello?
Yes.
So what I say is, when you have fully embodied what you want, it will come up. And then one thing that I want to tell people is, the reason you don't have what you want, it's because you're not ready to handle it with grace, maturity, and balance. Many people don't want to hear that. You want, and most of the time we are comparing our relationship with others. In fact, the reason why you think you need love is because so and so looks like they found love. And it looks so enticing and so good. And you're like, I want that. So it's not even your desire, like from your heart. It's something that you're looking and saying, oh, I want something like that because it looks good from the outside. From the inside, it might be looking very different, So you need to allow life, you need to actually allow yourself to do the work so that you are able, when it comes, to handle it with grace, maturity, and and balance. And every relationship you've been through has not been in vain. It has been preparing you by showing you what you don't want. Because when you know what you don't want, then you become clear about what you want. Lastly about this is, you usually attract what you judge. When you judge something, you're like, I have a certain negative charge, negative emotion about this thing. You will attract it. I don't know if you've ever tried walking next to a pool and you are thinking, I don't want to fall, and you felt like you are actually, your body was taking you there.
You're being pulled.
Exactly, like you're being pulled, exactly, because where your focus goes is where your energy flows. So when you keep judging and thinking, I don't want this, that is what you attract. Until the day you stop judging what you attract, then you will attract what you really desire and what is truly yours. And then the last thing about self-love in regards to the question is asked is, whatever arises in your experience, when you look at something, you look at your past relationships, maybe it was a marriage, maybe it was a committed relationship, maybe it was a long-term relationship. When you look at it, whatever arises in you, you know that mazokozanio that comes up is a revelation of the part of yourself that needs to be loved. That part of you that feels that way. That part of you that regrets that. That part of you that is guilty or ashamed about that. That's the part of you that is coming up for love. It's the one that's next online. So if you love that part of you and be like, I'm not less because I feel like this. I'm not less because I had that experience. I'm not less because that person treated me like that. I love myself anyway. And my own love is the highest form of love that I can ever receive. Then you're ready for your person.
You had mentioned abusive relationships, and there are lots of people who've been in them. Some people are still in them. How can they be able to learn about self-love and figure out where they are, whether that relationship is right for them or what they need to do about it?
For me, as long as there is abuse, the contract is cancelled. Because abuse can take you down a very bad road. A very bad road. And if you look at the benefits of being in an abusive relationship, me, I don't know which ones they are. Other than, because even if you're saying you're resilient, your self-esteem will be so eroded that it will be so hard to come back from it. So number one, sometimes the person who is abusing you because of their own inner pain. So if you come to that place and you're like, I want to work through this, but I can't go on with this abusive behavior, then find a way to get help. Can you guys go for couples therapy? Can this person do the work that they need to do to overcome their repressed emotions, the ones they are offloading on you? But if they don't have that level of commitment and that level of awareness, then I think you need to do something. Because at the end of the day, you need to look at what value the relationship is giving to your life. Because at the end of everything, you have only got you. You have got you from the beginning of your life to the end of your life. You are actually your soulmate. So if you're foregoing yourself for somebody else who does not see the value of your contribution, the value of your connection, then that tells me that you need to start from, why am I giving up myself? Do the work also. Learn to love yourself. Learn to say that I trust that I can pull myself through this, because a lot of women that have had sessions, we usually say, itaanza wapi?
Yes,
and I
I've
tell
also heard
people,
that.
I started my life with 300 bob.
Wow.
When I left my marriage, I only had 300 bob, and I have not died. Yeah, it wasn't easy. You see, the other thing, we want confirmation that it will be easy.
Yes.
Nothing is easy.
So
Nothing is, even waking up in the morning, like even doing this call was not easy. For me at least, you know. So when we are waiting for confirmation that it will be easy, then you give the other person power, because they are trying to show you there's nowhere you can go. I'm the only one who has got you. I'm the only one who can sustain you. I'm the one who's giving you a name, protection, provision, and all that stuff. But why are you allowing yourself to believe that? And you have a very great force inside of you. The Bible says greater is the one in me than the one who is outside of me. So these are bringing the aspect of spirituality, because some of these things you have to look at them from a higher dimension. Yeah, you have to look and say, who do I trust? This person who is abusing me, or the one who created me? And then make a decision. And you are the one who knows your situation, so don't allow people to push you around and make you make decisions that you're going to feel like they were not your decisions. Take responsibility over your life. Say, I made this decision, it's mine. You don't have to continue making a mistake because you made it in the first place.
Yes.
You know, you can decide. You have the power of choice. God has given you that, not even your mother. God himself has given you choice over your life. So take charge, take responsibility, and decide where you're going with your life next and what's good for you.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned something that I hear. Maybe people don't. We need to know, or we need to someone to explain to us, what do we mean when we say we are giving somebody else the power? Because some people talk about it and they can tell you you're giving somebody else power over you, and sometimes it's confusing, and we're trying to figure out what do they mean when yes, just please explain that to us so that we can understand that.
So what it basically means, it's power is, I can equate it to agency. Agency means the authority over your life, the authority over your decisions, the authority over your thoughts, the authority over your emotions, because sometimes you give people even the permission to decide how you're feeling. You give people permission to decide how you're thinking and what you're thinking. You give people the permission to decide, and society has tricked us into this. I don't know if you've noticed how you behave around people with certain uniforms.
Yes.
Like if you see somebody with a police uniform, automatically you put yourself in order. If you see somebody with a white lab coat, then you're like, this one, and maybe it's just a butcher man, So it's like we surrender the authority of our decision making. We surrender the authority of what is good for me to people. That is what giving away your power is. You decide that the government is the one that's going to decide how my next 5 years is going to be. You decide that your partner is going to decide what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy, and you give him that power, and he takes it. By the way, who doesn't love power? He takes it and decides you're never going to go out again. Your chama will last 2 hours. After that, you're going to start panicking. He decides that you're not going to have more than 2 friends. It's because and how do we give up our power? It's because we elevate the other person higher than ourselves in our own life. So you decide this person is more powerful in my life than me. Wow. Either because of a title or because of a relationship dynamic. So this one is my boss, so he has more power over me than myself. This one is my husband, so he has more power over me than myself. It's like you have put them on the throne of your heart, and now you have no other way than to worship them. And if you're worshiping somebody, they are lording over you. They are the Lord of your life. And if they decide you're going to hell, you're going to hell. If they decide to take you to heaven, it is up to them.
So we give this other person permission. We actually making a choice, because as you said, we have God given. We can make our own choices to do something.
Exactly.
So this other person is in my life, but I am allowing them to rule over me, so to speak, to tell me I can do this, I cannot do this. As you said, I'm going for the chama, but because my husband said I have to be home at a certain time, I'll cut short my meeting so that he's happy I am home on time.
But you don't give them for free, Coach Eva. It's a trading.
Because I'm getting something back.
Because I am getting. So you need to look at what are you getting. If I'm getting the status of being Mrs. So and so, then I am going to trade my power. I give you my power, and then in exchange, I take your last name, or I take your money, your credit card, or I take your roof. Now I have to stay under your roof. You see, when you make that trade, first of all, you have to demean yourself to a certain extent and say that I cannot do it myself, that it has to be done for me. And so you create a dynamic that is not a partnership. You see, when you start putting on that aura of, I look up to you, I'm dependent on you. Like I see there's somebody I was talking to the other day, and they were like, I'm desperate for this job. I'm like, that is where you go wrong. When you think you're desperate, then you think it's like a dog, it can smell your fear. Your boss can smell you're desperate. And when you're desperate, you attract the devil himself. to come and make with you the worst deal ever.
And relationships should be a partnership, not one person loading it over the other person.
Exactly. And you see, when you love yourself, remember that story I was giving you about the bread?
Yes.
You have the bread and you are eating half of the bread and you love it so much you're going to share. You think when you're going to share with someone you feel small. You don't feel small.
No.
Neither do you feel like they are bigger than you. That's the dynamic you want to create relationships from. They are not bigger than you because they are bringing some, or they are not smaller than you because they are not bringing anything. No, it's a joyful celebration of love, you know?
Yes.
And so it's not a transaction, because in a transaction is when you're looking carefully. Analeta Nini, what are you bringing to the table? Nowadays they're talking about the table, and I'm wondering who's bringing the table. You
In
know,
the first
let us
place,
not even talk about
who brought the
who are you
table?
bringing to the table? Who brought the table?
Before we ask, what are you bringing to the table?
Who brought the table? Because the one who brought the table is the one who's going to get more, because they are in charge of this negotiation deal.
They could take away the table and then there's nowhere to put things.
They take whatever they came with and what you brought.
And Coach Carol, where do we draw the line between self-love and selfishness? I could love myself and I'm doing things for me, and somebody else or my partner is saying I'm being selfish in things I do. How do we differentiate between selfishness and self-love?
Let me tell you something that a lot of people don't know. That self-love, actually, when I talked about self-love at the beginning, I talked about attention and compassion.
Yes.
Very important. Because when you have compassion for yourself, you know what happens? You begin to have compassion for other people. For example, if you've gone through a divorce, would you ever judge somebody who's gone through a divorce?
No, you wouldn't.
You wouldn't. Why? Because you know the pain of being in that situation. You know how the experience is. You know how things go the way you don't think they would ever go.
Yes.
And so you minimize your judgment because you've walked a mile in that shoe. So when you love yourself, loving yourself is not these things people are saying, loving myself. That is basic self-care. Taking yourself to the spa is not self-love. It is basic self-care. And it's very superficial on the surface. So there's a difference. Even self-love has a different vibe, a different energy, a different aura. Somebody who loves themselves is humble. Somebody who loves themselves is compassionate, is attentive, is self-aware. And that is a person who is selfless, not selfish. Selfishness comes because you're running away from your own emotions, and if somebody is going to take you to face your emotions, then you're going to do everything possible to cut them off from that route. And selfishness is about thinking about your ego. And what does the ego do? The ego is the one that creates all these mechanisms, self-defense mechanisms, so that we don't have to face ourselves.
Thank you very much.
Self-love inspires selflessness, not selfishness.
So we should be looking at self-love as being selfless.
Yes, exactly.
And selfish.
Because the outcome
is,
And
self-care, you said, is the things we do mainly outwardly on a physical level.
Yes, and exactly.
Which are also important things that we do to ourselves or for ourselves.
Yes.
They
are
also
very
play a
important.
part. Yes.
They are a manifestation of self-love. But it's the same way when you say, like, when you love somebody superficially, obviously your actions are going to also be superficial. Right?
Yes.
So when you love yourself truly, then what I like to call those practices is self-nurturing.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're nurturing yourself, and you don't have to do it in the way that other people say. It might not be going to the spa for you. It might actually be going to dig somewhere in a garden. to plant flowers. That's your way of nurturing yourself. Because again, when you love yourself, you're very much in touch of your own needs and you're taking responsibility for them. You're honoring your commitments to yourself and you're doing the best for yourself. So whatever that looks like, whether it is saying no, whether it is putting a boundary, whether it is drinking more water during the day, whether it is eating more vegetables, whether it is praying 5 times a day, however that looks like for you, when you're meeting your own needs, when you're taking responsibility for your life, when you're keeping your commitments to yourself, then that is what self-care looks like for you.
So self-care is really, as you said, a manifestation of the self-love you have within you.
Yes, exactly.
And both of them are important because you have to start with the inside before you can go on the outside.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. We are learning.
And one aspect of self-care, Coach Eva,
yes,
is having time to yourself.
making time.
Making time for yourself.
Being
Because
deliberate.
sometimes you find you're in a relationship and the person you're with, you have given them power over your life. So when they decide that you don't take time for yourself and you can't take time by yourself, then you don't. But if you love yourself, you'll be like, I need to nurture myself and this is important for me. And that's part of the conversations that you have when
Yes.
when you love yourself, even your conversations when you meet people change.
Yes.
Because you're also trying to see, does this person love themselves? Not, does this person love me? That's what we are trying to look for. We are looking the wrong side.
We are asking the wrong question.
Yeah, we're like, if this person doesn't love himself, how will he love you? Surely. So you should be checking, does he love himself? Does she love herself?
Wow, interesting. Now,
Yeah.
our 1 hour is almost over, but I have a question that is always asked by members of my group. A lot of them are single parents. They
Yeah.
have children, whether they're teenagers, whether they're younger, and raising them up on their own. And sometimes they have the challenge of, where do I find time to take care of me? I've been taking care of my family, my husband or my wife and
Yeah.
children. All of a sudden I'm alone and I'm the one with the children and I'm running up and down trying to make sure they have a good home. How
Yeah.
do we bring self-love into that kind of scenario?
First and foremost, anyone who has children and they're separated or divorced or in a complicated situation, they need to increase the volume on their self-love. And as I was talking about self-love earlier, I talked about self-love being a feeling and also action. And I talked about the action being compassion. Compassion meaning that you observe your feelings and your thoughts with care and understanding. So a lot of the times when we are going through these very dramatic life changes, we are not attentive. I talked about compassion and attention as being faculties of self-love. You're not attentive to your own feelings. It's like the way you're making dinner and your small baby is tugging at your skirt and she wants your attention, but then you're not giving her attention because you're busy making dinner and you prioritize the dinner over the child. And the child every minute becomes worse and worse and worse. And you get irritable and irritable and irritable and you end up just pushing them in a corner and they shut down. So that's what we are doing with ourselves. Self-love is saying that I don't even have to leave the house. I just have to notice when I'm getting overwhelmed and just take a minute, even if it's in the bathroom, to just go and allow those emotions and feelings to run through my system. I may cry, I may not, I may scream, but I'm going to give myself the attention. On top of the attention, whatever comes up, I'm going to hold it with understanding and care. And that is what self-love is. A lot of the times we are like, oh, I don't have time to meet up with my friends. I don't have time. first and foremost, even before you run outside for self-care, care for your thoughts, care for your emotions. When you do that, the automatic physical manifestations will happen. Even spending time with your kids will somehow revitalize you, will rejuvenate you. But if you're penting it up, you're piling it up, you're running away from yourself because maybe you're like, I wasn't supposed to be here at this point in my life. I'm 40, my job is not stable, I don't have a stable relationship, I am wasted, I am a failure, and then you're running away from yourself, then no matter how much of the external stuff you do, it won't work. It won't help you.
So we need to find time and take time just to be with ourselves, whether even if it's first thing waking up early, we take 10 minutes just to relax and just think about ourselves, not everything else that's running around us, and being calm.
Exactly.
I
can share a couple of exercises, Coach Eva.
Yes.
Because a lot of the times when you tell people that, they go and they start thinking about my life, sasa inaenda wapi,
yes,
sasa nitatoa wapi mtu, and you make it worse.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So what I am actually saying, practically speaking, is make time every day. Sit for 5 minutes with yourself and just connect with your body and just feel. Allow whatever feeling to come up. And without judgment or criticism, just tell yourself, I love, even though I feel like this, I love myself. You don't have to go into the details of why you feel the way you're feeling, who caused it, where it's coming from your childhood. Although you don't have to go through all of that. You just need to feel it and tell yourself, even though I feel like this, I love and accept myself. Because when we don't do that, guess what we do? We attract people who are going to make us feel it now and dramatize it. So whatever you're suppressing, if you're suppressing anger, you're going to attract somebody who's going to bring it out. Because the universe is very gracious. It needs you to express whatever is inside of you. So if you do that and all that is left is love, then you're going to attract somebody who will bring it out, bring out the love.
Wow. Thank you very much, Coach Carol. You have educated us. You have given us food for thought about our relationships and whether we value ourselves, whether we meet people who deserve us or we just accept anybody or anything, whether we're in relationships whereby somebody, we have given them power to dictate how we'll live or what we'll do or how we'll do it. You have also told us that even as we have self-love, we also need to self-care, or as you called it, self-nurturing. And this is a manifestation of what is inside. If we find we're not self-nurturing ourselves, then we look inside ourselves and see, am I loving myself? Am I being true to myself? So thank you very much for your time, for the information you've given us. Ladies and gentlemen who are listening, if you need to speak to Coach Carol, she said she's a counselor, she's a transformational coach. You can get in touch with us. We will definitely give you her contact and you can be able to call her and talk to her on a one-on-one basis. If you're having problems with understanding what self-love is or how to get it, she's a great resource, and that is why we are here. We want to be able to have good relationships with ourselves first and foremost before we go out there to meet Mr. Right or Mrs. Right. We need to be able to love ourselves and be happy with ourselves. There is no better half. We are whole in ourselves. The other person comes to complement us. Coach Carol, is there any word for us, last words before we sign off? Any advice you would like us to go home with in addition to everything else you've given us?
The advice that I would love to give, that I continuously give myself as well, is that I am the one that I have been waiting for.
Wow.
And tell yourself that as many times as you need to hear it. Because one day it will hit home and you will be filled with so much love that it won't matter if you're alone or you're not. And when that time comes, then the person that you will connect with will feel free to be themselves as well, because you'll not be needing them to be something else. So that's my advice. And I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you so much for hosting. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really have had an amazing time being here with you. And I'm hoping that everybody who has been listening to us will start their journey to loving themselves, because the world is waiting for you to love yourself. Because when you love yourself, there's so many gifts, not just Mr. Right or Mrs. Right. There's so many gifts that you're going to tap into, your potential, bring it to the fullness of its manifestation. And so we are all waiting for you, and I root for you, I encourage you, I support you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our session with Coach Carol, who has been teaching us about self-love, self-care, and her last words to us, which are not the only words we should remember, but remember, I am the one that I have been waiting for. Always remind yourself that no matter the situation, you say, I am the one that I've been waiting for. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for participating and listening to us. We shall be here again tomorrow night at 8 o'clock in the evening. We shall send out the link for YouTube, and for Facebook there is already the private group. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and have a very good night. Goodbye. Thank you, Coach Carol, and have a good night
Bye.
too. Okay.
Good night, Coach Eva.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.